right, welcome back. This is the Something About Your podcast. I'm Kent Lindstrom. I'm your host. My guest back again is Ben Cheung. And back, how you doing?
Very well, thanks.
Good. And back for a happy reason. This is the Something Venture podcast in which I explore the reality behind the Silicon Valley headlines as I sit down with the people who are shaping the way we view the world online and beyond. And you are certainly doing that with bots.
Yes.
I want to tell your story. So you came on and we kind of did the struggling entrepreneur story.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was great. Hopefully I was nice about it, but I wasn't super optimistic. And yet you have gone on and essentially been acquired. Congratulations, by the way, by Microsoft.
Yes.
I guess you and LinkedIn. The two.
Yes.
And so I thought we'd go back and, kind of recount your story so people remember. You can go back and listen to the podcast, but kind of briefly how you got there, and then talk what it's like to get acquired, like what that experience is like. Because, I'll be honest, it's a rare thing in Silicon Valley. Like people think their odds of getting acquired are 1 out of 2, or 2 out of 3, or whatever, and they're really, frankly,
it's probably 1 out of 10.
Yeah, 1 out of 10, and that's being generous. I've told people before on the podcast, there's a great blog post that somebody did about all the different phases of building a company and what you perceive the odds, or what entrepreneurs perceive the odds to be, and what the actual odds are. So, you get a meeting with a VC, you think, 20% chance he'll invest. And of course, VCs take 1,000 meetings a year and invest in one company, so your odds are way lower. And then they go through every stage. And it gets to the point where you get a term sheet from a VC and you go, 100% chance, it's a term sheet. And actually 80%, 20% of term sheets don't turn into anything, that kind of thing. So anyway, so it's something pretty special that's happened to you. So let's go back to your story. You came to the United States and had an interesting path, I think, to becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, just a quick recap. I was originally born in southern China and came to the United States because my grandmother was here, and then got really interested in computers when I was in high school, and just did never walked away from that point on, and did an engineering degree, and then worked at Intel, and then VMware, and then Jive Software, and then started my own company. And
what was your first computer? Was it a Commodore? Do I remember that correctly?
It was actually in school with the TRS-80. I think that's what the first exposure. But the first one that I owned was actually a 10D computer from Radio Shack.
Wow.
It was very costly back then, a few $1,000s.
Yep.
My dad bought it for me.
Yeah.
So a little background about the company. For those of you who don't remember, my co-founder Charles Lee and I in late 2013 started brainstorming for ideas, and then in early 2014, we started a company called Genee. It's a scheduling assistant, help people to schedule meetings. But instead of using people, it uses artificial intelligence to schedule meetings. So obviously, artificial intelligence is not like off-the-shelf kind of thing. When we started in 2014, we had to do a lot of work to make it work, and it's been a long journey. And thankfully, we had a good exit that Microsoft acquired us, as of September 1st.
So what? So how did you? How did the company start? You were 2 guys in a garage, or did you go out and you raise a bunch of capital, or? What was the kind of growth trajectory of this thing?
Yeah, well, we just started brainstorming, and Charles is a doer kind of person, so we just started prototyping. And at first, we even when we didn't really have that much code, we even faking it. I told Charles why don't you just send an email, CC this assistant, schedule some meetings, and in fact there was no code in back end, so I was just doing it in person just to learn.
Wow.
But that didn't last long.
What were you learning? You're asking people to pretend there was a system there and see what they would do, or?
Yeah, just to see how they would react, and I would actually manually do some of that, and then we started adding more and more automation on top of it. And
Eric Ries would be proud. That's the ultimate minimum viable product.
Yeah. I mean, it was so cheap to get started.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So.
And then how did it start to grow, or did it ever really grow, or was it just the technology that think?
It
Was
grew,
appealing, or?
yeah, it grew pretty well. I mean, we started with obviously friends and family as a circle of people that we had, and we started, getting that and getting some virality because the people got invited to meetings were interested in what is this thing and how can this guy that afford a administrative assistant when it's nowadays you have to be really high level up to have one. So we got a good amount of virality effect to grow, but it wasn't like WhatsApp kind of growth trajectory. So eventually we got about like 20,000 users basically.
And did you raise capital along the way, or
we raised $1.45 million, mainly C stage capital, and it's really like what you mentioned, Ken, that people think that you just walk in the door and get the money. It's really not true because there are all different kinds of VCs out there. You might talk to a lot without knowing that they're actually not the right people to talk to. Maybe some even invest in stage C and stage D, and then you're going in and asking for angel kind of money. So it's a lot of trial and error to figure it out.
Raising, one of the things we talk about, it's always hard raising money. Like people act, you think it's kind of easy, and it sounds like people just are falling all over each other to give you money. But even if you have a good company, it just takes a ton of time. Partially because these venture capitalists are financial professionals, and for them, time's on their side. Like if there's no urgency, they can just hang out and take their summer vacation. And some of these guys do 2 or 3 deals in a year. I mean, think about that. Like if I did 2 or 3 things in a year, I'd lose my job. But some of these guys, we do 2 or 3 deals a year, something like that. Now the joke, of course, is they have to go raise money from other people, from their limited investors, but. But it's always difficult. So you guys put together about $1.5 million. And
That's right. Yeah.
Started building the company.
And hiring was really difficult. I recommend to my friends now that if you're thinking about starting a company, first thing, just see if you can get a few guys together first. Because if you can't, even if you get funding, it's still a long process. It's much better especially if it's something that you're not sure if you were doing, try to convince 2 of your friends to do. And if you couldn't, then maybe you couldn't convince yourself either, because they would see through you if you weren't 100% committed.
Wow, that's a really interesting insight. It's recruiting's tough, and one of the things too, even if you're a startup these days, so many startups are well funded. It used to be like in the late 90s, early 2000s, like people would work for kind of free or cheap, for a startup. And that's not really the case anymore. They actually get paid essentially as if they were working at Twitter. In fact, we did a big salary survey that was kind of interesting about like how much people got paid, like think of like a strong senior engineer. And what we found was that you'd get paid, I use some number like say 130, 140,000 if you worked at a startup. If you worked at Uber or a company like that, Dropbox, you'd think they would get paid a lot more, and some of them did. But a lot of them didn't. And it turned out what was happening was that if you go to a startup, you don't get paid much more than that because they're like, hey, we're a freaking startup. If you go to Uber, you don't get paid much more than that because they're like, we're Uber and we're giving you a bunch of stock options. So there's this sort of natural, they're huge salaries, but by any standard in the world. But there's also not that much variance at the startup compared to some of these big companies.
That's really true. I mean, what I tell people is that like the most likely people who are not getting paid well or getting by with almost no pay are the founders.
Exactly.
Because you got to pay the other guy, but there's a fixed pod. So you just take it out of yourself. That's what you have to do. Those are the people who are not getting paid, are the founders.
It's a struggle. So how big did you grow in terms of employees, or what was kind of the?
We got to a good number. It's kind of go ups and downs. We at one point had around like 6 people, and we didn't really go too far beyond that. But but it has its ups and downs, But I think one of the things that we talk a little bit about, like, well, how do you get sold? And I think one of the big thing is really just be at it, don't give up. I think that's I'm sure a lot of people say it, but you don't really appreciate how hard it is, when you're in the middle of it. Because not everything just takes off and right away that you never have to worry.
Well,
there's always
in fact,
this
nothing
after.
really does. Like it's the exception when something does take off. We talk about that in our business a lot, where you know we're doing great and growing, but it's the result of a lot of hard. You know, once in a while there's like a Friendster, or a WhatsApp, or a, you know, Uber or something that just takes off. A lot of times it's just a ton of hard work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for us is just, you know, keep at it, and we're very passionate about the scheduling problem.
Yep.
So we just kept going, and you know, we stopped. We didn't really get paid to start out with, but you know, when it was really getting tough, but we just still kept going.
And was there a point where you thought, oh, man, you know, it's too hard, or I'm going to give up, or you know, this is just harder than we thought? Or?
Yeah, I would be lying if I say that there wasn't, but of course there are always those kind of deliberations, you know, that you're always thinking about. But I think what's cool is that, you know, as with the co-founder, and you both kind of gung-ho about things, and you kind of have like, you know, spot each other, kind of like almost like going to the gym together kind of thing. So you pick each other up and get it going. It's really true. I admire the people who actually went out and did it alone. I don't know if I could.
And a lot of people don't. I mean, you get like I guess stories about Jeff Bezos and things like that. But then as you talk to people, a lot of times there's either, if not a co-founder, there's like a very key person that helps out. I know some people who won't start companies by themselves, or won't start a venture fund by themselves, because they just think it's way too hard. It's a crazy thing to do, to start a company. But so along the way, when did you start? So how did this happen that you ended up going from the struggling entrepreneur who maybe is going to, you know, have to give up, to, hey, you're going to be a big part of, you know, what Microsoft's doing?
Well, you're always talking to people, you know, because one of the big thing about startup is that, like you mentioned, you know, there's user growth, but it's a long process. It's not easy. So you're always looking for you know, big things, either a change in the industry, or, you know, big players that you can leverage to kind of as your distribution channel to get you customers, and, you know, hopefully it's very beneficial for them too, so that they're highly motivated doing so. So we always talking to different people about, you know, ideas and how do we get that growth going. You know, I think a lot of people just starting our company don't appreciate how hard it is to get users. And they thought like, oh, I just throw an app and upload it in the App Store, and then here they come. And, you know, we even have a really good virality factor with the, you know, invitees. Still, it's challenging. It's not easy, because there's so much noise out there to break through, and it costs a lot of money to break through the noise. Yep. So we're constantly looking for like those, you know, the unfair advantage, so to speak, to, you know, be able to hook up with a big channel or big player. You know, other people look for movie stars. You know, we tried Joe Montana.
Yeah. How'd that go?
It was difficult, and we were not successful.
Yeah.
But you know, but those are the kind of things that you try. You leverage big companies or other people to help you break through in terms of the user growth, and, you know, and as from those conversations, we kind of, you know, you build relationships with people, and they get to know that you're good guys, and then comes the other thing is that they start getting to see the sophistication that you have learned, that the technology stack that you build up. And I think that's the other thing that I think that was helpful, and I don't know if it's applicable for all you know, circumstances, but we were so gung-ho about this idea that we never pivoted. I mean, it was like 2.5 years, and, you know, there were many times that it looks like it's really difficult to grow, and we didn't just say, oh, let's try out a completely different thing. But we were passionate about solving this problem, so we just go deeper and deeper in domain. Like, let's try the corporate, you know, start scheduling conference room. Oh shoot, people, when they look at it, you know, large corporation look at the calendar, everybody's busy. The problem is not about let's find a time, but you couldn't find a time even if you put a human at it. Yeah. So we start digging deeper and say, well, can we figure out how to find a time when everybody's calendar is busy? Right. When you look at a big company, 6 people plus the conference rooms, you just couldn't find a common time. Can you figure out how to do that? So we just dig deeper and deeper into the domain and start building both our own knowledge as well as the technology to kind of drill deeper and deeper. And then in combination with the relationship that you have with those people, and you're not shy about telling them your secrets. You know, don't hide your secrets. Yeah. tell them about your secrets, and then they start appreciating your secrets, and they would be interested, and it's kind of just go down the road like that.
It's funny. Nobody's going to steal your idea. Like everyone, there's a phase, and still everyone's, you have to keep it secret. Like, you think Microsoft wakes up in the morning looking for new ideas? Like, no way. Like they're busy.
Yeah, they thought about it. They might tried it already. When they couldn't get it to work, maybe that's kind of when they start appreciating how hard it is, and then they want to bring you in.
So you started working with the product people at Microsoft. Is that who you were?
That's one of the things that about kind of useful for us and really lucky is being in the street for a while. You start knowing people.
Yep.
So and you just kind of talk to everybody,
Yeah.
and your friends help out, and we have good friends that are at good positions at Microsoft that kind of help introduce us, and we have other companies that we're talking to. Is this similar scenario also.
Yeah.
But I think one of the thing about startup is that it's a very humbling experience because you really never know who can help you out. People always think like, the people that are not connected, or I don't know what, they're not. Don't waste my time on them. Let me try to hit the big shot guys. The CEO of this, the CTO of that. But it's a trade-off because for the big shot guys, they can give you 1 millisecond of thought, and then they'll go on to some other topics that they deal with. But for the guy that might not be so connected, you can have an hour conversation with them, and they're totally convinced, and they love you. They love your product. They think about you, every day.
Yeah.
And and they tell other people about you every day. So what do you choose? The big shot guy that gives you 2 milliseconds and you're gone. Yeah. And if within those 2 milliseconds he didn't see something, he couldn't help you.
Right.
But with all the guy that might give you 5-10 minutes of thought every day that he ran into people and mentioned about you. So I think that the key thing I learned for this is that it's a very humbling experience. You have to ask everybody for help. You cannot say, I'm so good that everybody should help me. No, you have to ask everybody to help. You have to be very humble. You're like the last guy in the line.
That's a great insight. That is not what you hear from a typical Silicon Valley CEO, by the way, that you should be humble. So,
yeah, I mean, that's I thank everybody in person that helped me. I mean, I went through and everybody. It's a very humbling experience, and I felt like it's also a good lesson to be learned in life for me also, is that no matter who you are, and you try to be the big shot of this and that in this huge company, you go out and start up a company, you're just like everybody else.
Right. Yep.
You stop being on the guy on the street just like everybody else, begging and
you might as well
doing
have a dry
whatever.
Cleaning business or whatever.
Yeah, you just like you're just asking for favors, you're begging, you're talking to everybody. You're just like anybody. Once you walk out of that shoe, that role of that big shot position that you have in the company, and you go out to the street and you start on your own, just like everybody else. I mean, unless you have all the money in the world already to fund your own startup. But if you ask for money and it's a good discipline to do, you're just like everybody.
So how did it happen? How did they approach you? Like, how did they say, hey, maybe there's more here than just a relationship? How does that?
Well, we have some pretty good discussions with pretty senior people there. I think Qui Lu was on the news. He was the first senior executive that we talked with at Microsoft. And Chi, people don't realize this guy is really phenomenal person. Like, he does insane things. Like, he comes down to meet people in Silicon Valley all the time, and we met with him. And the first meeting we met with him, he pretty much just asked if we were interested to be part of Microsoft. And also from our perspective, first meeting with him, we knew this is the kind of guy that we like to work for.
Wow.
I mean, unfortunately he's now no longer there because due to the news that came out yesterday that a health issue that he had. But when we met him, like, I look at this guy and it's like I want to follow this guy.
Wow.
So that really helped. That's pretty much helped everything else. I mean, it's like a mutual traction to start out with on first meeting.
It's funny. I joke sometimes that I started this podcast because I get sick of Silicon Valley podcasts where they spend all their time talking about how great Apple is and how bad Microsoft is and whatever. It's like, it's really nice to hear nice things about Microsoft for a change. Obviously, there's great people working there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I think just like, you can't say how bad Chinese were or how good Russians are, whatever it is. It's a big. These are big companies, and big companies made of people, and there are all kinds of people in there. So
by the way, hugely successful. Like obviously, Bill Gates and his team built something, and something amazing that touches everybody. So even if you don't like the latest security patch on whatever Microsoft product you have, there's some great people working there.
Yeah, I think it's just like big companies are like countries. There are people that you like, and the people who don't,
right.
and they do good things, and then they do bad things. So it's an organization.
Well, when they said, "What do you think about joining Microsoft?" Were you clever? Were you coy at all? Did you say, "Oh, well, think about it," or were you just excited from the get-go? Or
well, I tell people it's less about which company you join. I think I think for people who are just starting out school, I would say it is important to go with a successful company so that you look like there is a success on your resume. Unfortunately, people are very superficial that way when they do initial rounding without you already establish yourself. But for people like me, been around for 20 plus years, it's really about what you learn out of it. So when people ask so are you excited about joining Microsoft? Would you have preferred to work for Facebook or this or that? And I said, well, it's really, what I want to talk about is what am I learning?
Right.
What when I get in there, what am I going to come out with? I know one day I'll come out either retire or come out and look for another job.
Yeah.
But what do you get out of it when you come out with? Yes, you get paid, but you get paid in many different places. So I felt that what's important to me was that it's an opportunity to kind of keep going on the path that I already started to kind of go deeper into artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I tell people when you think about it. It's really not about which company you get into, but what area are you getting into that you have the opportunity to learn.
Right.
And the nice thing about artificial intelligence, especially the discipline that I'm in, is really artificial intelligence involved interacting with people.
Yep.
So it's about it's about conversations, right? Conversations technology. So it's a new area. Nobody knows it all.
Right.
And it's a good opportunity to learn when everybody else is learning.
Yeah.
So you're not the only guy who's way behind.
Right. Now, is there a part of this where the bots just kind of got hot while you happen to be working on the bots and that became a big thing? Is that a piece of it, or was this
that's the last thing, that I was going to mention is that you kind of have to be lucky also. Yeah. I guess that's part of it.
Another thing you never hear in Silicon Valley that's also very true. You just got lucky.
You just have to be lucky. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, it's like you got to be persistent. You got to hang around, because if we folded shop, a year ago, we wouldn't be here today. Secondly, is you got to have the goods.
Yeah.
Means that the depth of the domain or the technology stack that you're building go deeper. Yeah, maybe you get narrower set of people who wants it because you get more and more specific, but that's the chance that you're taking. And then plus you have to have the luck and right. to go with it. You know how you can overcome luck? It's with time.
Yeah.
If you are around.
Yeah.
You have a chance to get lucky.
Yep.
The other thing to overcome luck is, not to achieve it, but to improve the probability of it, is really get the word out there. The more people that know, like I was saying about being humble, to just talk to everybody, because you don't know, who you would run into.
Right.
So it's you can be there around for a long time. You can, get more people to know about what you're capable of. Don't hold it a secret. I think those would help you to improve your luck.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so what? So then, how does it happen? Does somebody call you up and say, "Hey, we're going to send you an offer," or some other guy come in from the corporate side?
One of the things that people don't know, and I really appreciate, is that because I was on the other side before in other companies acquiring other company, and the process it was messy. Even though I was on the other side, and it's probably a fault of our own that it was messy. But for Microsoft, it was actually a very straightforward process. They have a main contact to start out with, and then you just, it's a very precise process that you walk through. So you just follow the process.
Wow! And so they make you an offer. Do you negotiate it at all? Or do they
yeah,
say,
you do. You have to negotiate. So you have to negotiate nicely, because these are people that you're going to be working with.
Right. So so are they pretty they don't offer you $5, but they're settle up at $20. Is it relatively reasonable, or is it no? You really
No, it's very reasonable. I think I think one of the things is that I think from my view as entrepreneur, in looking in, is that we talk to other people too.
Sure.
And what I'm seeing is that Microsoft I think the way that they treat it is really very professional, and they don't try to screw you from the beginning and then try to come back up. No, they're very reasonable to start out with. So it's like you feel being treated well and generous.
Wow.
And we do have talk to other companies. It's not the same way. And it's not just the money; it's how they treat you. When you walk in the door, when you do an interview, do they ask you whether you need water or not? Right? They have somebody make sure that you're not like you're well taken care of.
Oh, interesting.
It's very different. Yeah. Like when we went up to visit people in Seattle, they have a dedicated person just to look out for our needs. So that's really like outstanding. Wow. So you just feel like you're being very respected and treated well.
Right.
The whole process.
So when the deal closed and the money it's done, like here you go, what did that feel like? Was it like a sense of relief, or were you like, wow, my life is different now? Like what was the feeling you had when that moment when
it's mixed. Yeah, it's a bit relief that that it's a milestone and something is done. But then, like what they say, it's not done until it's done.
Yep.
And actually, one of my investors say, I call it done when I see the money in my bank account. Yeah. So, so that's what one of my investors says. Say I assume that you're done when I see the money wired over already in my bank account. So, so it's relief, but yeah, also a little bit anxiety because people don't pay you for nothing, right? You have to be kind of cognizant of that, and you have to live up to the expectations and to achieve what you're being paid for.
Yeah.
So
they say that Jan. Did you do anything? Did you go out to dinner and celebrate like something? Like
my co-founder and I are pretty low key people. We kind of just have this understanding. We don't.
It's funny. Everyone.
We don't go crazy. We like. Yeah. And some friends call like, "Did you take your wife out and family out?" Yeah. I said, no, not really,
What if your wife's happy about that?
Yeah. I mean, we just kind of it's just normal.
It's funny,
maybe it's a relief. I don't know.
I saw Jan, the guy who founded WhatsApp, Jan's, and however much he sold it for, $17 billion, and the money transferred. And he said he just went back to the office afterwards and got on to the next thing. So I guess that's maybe the kind of guy who, if you sell your company, you're the kind of guy who doesn't look at it as the last step.
Yeah, it's just I didn't feel like there was I mean it was there's no big moments or anything like that. It's just pretty normal.
So that's done. So now you're in and how is it being in a big company now? You're in a new office, obviously.
Quite honestly, it hasn't been that different because the way that they run this is that they want us to run like a startup.
That's smart.
So and I view that the way that nobody mentioned this. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I felt like we got Series A. That's kind of what it's looking like. You have a team, and then they want you to execute, and it's quite different than what people imagine of Microsoft. Quite honestly.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. You mentioned you're in the Twitter building here in San Francisco, which is pretty funny. I've been in that building, and they don't have enough elevators. Like we talked about this previously. Yeah. There's something about that. Every time I go there, I feel like I'm waiting for I don't know. It's like being in China or something where there's never enough elevators for the number of people in the building.
Yeah, I mean it was I felt it was a bit of a onboarding require, and reminds me of user experience in terms of the way that the building is. Certain elevators only go to certain floors, and then you have to swipe your badge to press a certain button. It will tell you which elevator and all that stuff. It would. I think some designer probably could really help solve some of that problem there on top of the traffic problem.
Yeah, there's something going on. It is obviously not a big topic, but it's kind of funny. That building used to be a furniture mart. So,
is it?
Yeah. Wow. So I think first of all, it used to be a furniture mart. And so maybe when they design, I know they know how to design this, but maybe they didn't expect it to be floors full of just people sitting there taking elevators up and down. I think that building was also owned by Shorenstein, a big real estate company here, and recently got bought by a big Chinese company. So there you have your whole picture of San Francisco: Twitter and Microsoft in the same building, owned by the Chinese.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, there is a pretty fancy market downstairs. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've seen that place. That place is too precious. Everything's so expensive in that market.
I haven't bought anything, but it looks really fancy.
It's interesting that building. It's in the city. It's about 9th and Market. And if you don't know San Francisco, Market Street's actually where that part of Market Street's where a lot of the social services are. So there's a very interesting sort of mix on the streets of people who are, one end of society, getting paid a lot and going to that fancy market. And then there's like the kind of homeless people who are going to the different mental health services that are around there. It's definitely an interesting experiment that they're running, kind of putting something that you don't really get at Facebook and Google down in the South Bay, where they're off on those big campuses. It's like everything's kind of just mixed up, right down there on Market Street in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think it's quite different than in the peninsula.
Yeah,
where I live.
Well, so this is great. So what happens next? I mean, it's nice to hear that Microsoft. I mean, I was not expecting to hear that Microsoft is taking a hands-off approach and letting you remain an entrepreneurial company. Of course, that's exactly what they should do, and what more companies should do. What happens next for you guys?
Just execute and deliver, and do the what best we can. So, and for me personally, it's to learn. To learn. I mean, it's a conversational AI is still a really, new area. And, I think, unfortunately, right now, because of the limited capability of the bots out there, it's already getting a bit of a bad name. But I think that, if you really focus and we all really focus and keep trying to go deeper in that value, I think it will come out.
And that's the term for it, conversational AI?
I don't know what the term is, quite honestly. You could say, some people say conversational platform as opposed to the app platform, but I just call it AI, but AI is such a broad term. Yeah. So, but I definitely, my area of interest is in, the AI as it applies to be able to have conversations with people.
Right.
We probably would never be able to have conversation as well as one person with another.
Yep.
But but we have a lot of roughness between people also, even between conversation between people. So. So
I do think, I don't know if it's in the same category, but sort of using things like Siri for search, like talking to your device, seems to be growing really rapidly. Like I'm watching people around me go from being people who search on their phone to like turning their head and, hey Siri, what's the baseball game score? And hey, what's this? What's that? So it feels like it's coming on more rapidly than I had imagined it might.
It definitely is. I mean, like I just heard that like there are over 100 million people using Cortana or something like that. I was like, wow, you would not imagine. Wow. Maybe because I live in Silicon Valley, that's a weird thing. But and maybe also I underestimated the number of times that I use these agents.
Yeah. Well, hopefully 100 million people will be using Genee pretty soon. Is it going to keep the same name or?
No, we actually shut down the Genee service. I don't know if you saw in the news. Yeah, we shut down the Genee service.
And so
but the team is still together, and we're going to be working on something else together.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for this. Any final thoughts? What a journey you've taken from coming to this country to building something to being part of one of the biggest companies in the world.
It might sound great, but I think it's kind of a dime a dozen in Silicon Valley because there are so many immigrants here. And you just grab any of them, and it's really a dime a dozen. And I'm really glad that we're finally doing something about the H-1B thing to have some special provisions so that like somebody in the middle of starting their company over here in Silicon Valley won't get kicked out of the country.
Yeah,
I think I'm definitely very passionate about that. I'm glad that it's happening.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
All right, this has been the Something About Your podcast. Talk to you next time.